In this video, we're going to talk about building, wiring, and programming your RC car. There are a million different ways to program your vehicle, but these are some tips and tricks that I've picked up along the way that might help. So to start things off, as you're building your car, the first thing that I like to start with is essentially what I call a drive rail. So if you look up top here, you've got this rail with a whole bunch of gears mounted to it, along with the wheels and the motor. So I've got the motor positioned at the back of my car. In reality, either the back or the middle works perfectly fine. And what I've got is one gear driven off the motor, off the end of the motor shaft, driving all of the gears in the gear training, and on that same shaft then is both wheels. And notice I've got an odd number of gears here. So when this gear turns one way, its mating gear will turn the opposite way. And then when that meshes with the next gear, it'll turn the opposite way again, which is the wrong way. And when I mate it with another gear, it'll have both wheels going in the same direction. So when you notice, I turn the gear and both wheels are turning in the same direction. There are two different motor styles you can use. I've got the HD 40-to-1 hex motor. It works great. I would say both motors are perfectly fine. And I just picked this one for packaging reasons. So really what you're doing is you're putting together the drive rail, and I've got it together on a short piece of extrusion. You could also build it on a longer piece of extrusion. It really is a personal preference and how you can fit everything together. Keep in mind you've got a limited number of gears, and so you want to use what you have in your kit, but only what's in your kit for it to be fair. Once you've taken care of the drive rails, you want to move on to mounting the phone, the battery, the expansion hub, and basically building the rest of your robot. So you see I've got two drive rails, one on either end of the robot, and I've got pieces of extrusion connecting them. And on top of the extrusion, I've got an L bracket with basically like bolt nuts and bolts. The top of the bolt slides into the extrusion, and then the nut tightens down, and it's called a nylock nut, and so it won't loosen up over time. So you just tighten those down. I've got them at each of the four corners. Next, what I've done is I've got a mount here, which I can put the battery and the cell phone on. And right now I've just got a piece of tape that once I'm ready, I put the battery in and wrap the tape over top. During the camp, you'll have a few different options, including tape, possibly zip ties, or Velcro. And it's really important that you keep the phone, battery, and expansion hub all very secure. When your robot's driving around, if any of those disconnect, it won't work and your robot won't be able to perform as you're driving. The expansion hub in particular, I've actually got it bolted to the extrusion with three different bolts. There's a fourth one here that isn't bolted to anything, but you notice with three bolts, it's pretty well secure at that point. So if I take this, the entire robot is mechanically sound, although one tip I have for you is for the games that you'll be playing, it might benefit you to try to get your wheel to the very edge of your robot. You notice that I've got the frame sticking out further than the wheel. Now, if the wheel were out further, it would have the ability to climb up a little bit higher, whereas right now the frame will hit the mat or whatever you're trying to climb on top of, and you're limited to only climbing whatever's lower than your frame. So the next step, once you've done that, is actually wiring the robot. And what I have here is essentially the most simple wiring configuration that you can have. I've got one data cable and one power cable running to port 0 on the expansion hub, and I've got a data cable and power cable for my other motor also going to the expansion hub. Now, if I had a third motor or any other mechanisms, I would run it to the open slots here. And so all of the motors are going to be routed to, and it says right on there, motor encoder. So you're running everything, all the motors to those slots, And in our camps, we're probably not going to be dealing with the slots down here, though if you did have sensors or anything, you'd route them to this part of the expansion hub. So we've kind of covered the robot portion of it. You guys can get creative with your robot design, but we're all going to have to worry about the phones, connectivity, and actually driving the robot. So in order to connect your phones to the robot and actually drive it, you will need to get two phones and you'll pair them together. You'll notice on the back here, one is labeled DS, that's driver station. The other is labeled RC. And actually, this one's called RC Iowa 1, driver DS Iowa 2. I actually grabbed the wrong phones. Iowa 1 should pair with Iowa 1, and Iowa 2 should pair with Iowa 2. But that's all right. I'll show you how to pair these anyway. But during your camp, the phone should be labeled for you. So the first thing we're going to do is power on both phones, which I have here. And again, it's driver station and robot controller. That's what those stand for. And you'll notice on the phone, we've got a few different apps. The bottom app here is called FRC or FTC Robot Controller. I'm going to click that and open it up. And as that's opening, you'll notice on the other phone, the driver station, I've got FTC Driver Station. I'll click that one and open it up, and you'll see a screen that looks like this. The driver station phone will connect to your controller, and the robot controller phone will connect directly to your robot. The first thing we want to do, though, is make sure that the phones are talking to each other. And when they are, you'll notice on the driver station phone that it'll be pinging our robot controller phone. So right now they're not talking to each other. What I'll do is I'm going to go into the phone and go to settings on both of them. And I'm going to search Wi-Fi Direct. Wi-Fi Direct on the phone. And so you see the option Wi-Fi Direct right by my thumb. I'm going to click that. And on here, you'll notice RC Iowa 1, which I have right here, is located right by my thumb again, trying to get the light to work. But I'm going to click on RC Iowa 1, which I've just clicked. And now on my RC Iowa 1, it's now asking me if I want to accept the invitation. And I'm going to click accept. I've now clicked accept, so now the two phones are talking to each other. Now I'm going to go back into the respective apps, and you'll notice on the driver station phone, up by my finger here, now there's a ping number. And because they're pinging each other, I know that they're connected. So now that they're connected, I'm going to take my robot controller, and I'm going to mount it onto my robot. I'll also take my battery, which looks just like this, has a connector with a flat end and a round end, and make sure you put the flat end mating with the correct orientation on the expansion hub. So I'm going to take this robot controller, and we're going to strap it all in, just like that. And I'm also going to plug in the battery into the expansion hub, just like that. And you'll notice there's a LED light that turns on. That means you've got power to your expansion hub. I've also got a USB, a micro USB to USB-A cord coming out of the expansion hub, and what you call an OTG cable. And an OTG cable is basically a USB-A input to micro USB output. I'm going to plug my OTG cable into my USB-A output from the expansion hub, and I'm going to plug my micro USB into the phone. Just like that. And now you'll notice I've got a green LED showing up on the expansion hub. All right, now taking my driver station phone, I've got my controller here, And my controller is plugged into a USB hub. Now this USB hub, you could plug in up to 3 controllers technically, but we would only ever use 2 on one robot. But if I wanted to, I could plug in an additional controller. The USB hub goes to another OTG cable, which I have here. And similarly, I'm going to plug this OTG cable into this phone, into the driver station. All right, now that I've plugged in my robot controller directly into the expansion hub via the OTG cable, I'm going to go into my robot controller phone and the robot controller app. And if I do that, go to robot controller. If I click the 3 dots on the app, there's an option to configure robot. I'm going to click configure robot and I'm going to click new. Once I've done that, it's going to identify that there's an expansion hub portal 1, which you can't really see that well on the phone now, but you can click expansion hub portal 1. It's detecting that it's connected to the expansion hub. And now I'll click on expansion hub 6, which was the name of this expansion hub, and it's giving me options for both motors, servos, digital devices, and a whole bunch of other options. I've got 2 motors connected. So I'm going to click motors, and now I'll look at my wiring that I've done, and I've got port 0, 1, 2, 3. So I'll look into port 0, and I've got an HD hex motor 40 to 1. So I'll click the drop down on port 0, scroll down, and click REV Robotics 40 to 1 HD hex motor, and I'm going to call that left drive. So you give it a name in the app, left drive. And you can name it whatever you want, but it helps to name it with it'll help you program later if you name it the correct thing. So port 1, same thing. I've got a 40 to 1 hex motor. I'm going to call that right drive. All right, and that's now done. I'm going to click done on the app, done again, and then I'm going to save my configuration. And for this, I'm going to name my configuration RC car. And you can name your configuration whatever you'd like. So I've named it RC car, and now it shows up as a configuration option on my robot controller app. So once I've done that, I can click the back button. We go back, and now we are going to remount it on the robot in a secure way. All right, and now with that mounted, I will make sure with my driver station phone that I'm still pinging, which I am at 6 milliseconds, and anything under 10 milliseconds is it's fine. If you start getting over 10 milliseconds, it starts to get very laggy when you're driving your robot. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about how to program your RC car with the laptop that's been provided to you. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is open up your robot controller app, and you'll click 3 buttons in the top right corner, and you've got the option to click Program and Manage. Now on the phone, click Program and Manage, and it'll bring you to a special window which will give you a password that you'll use to connect to the phone with your laptop. The first thing you'll want to do is make sure you're disconnected from any other Wi-Fi devices, and then you'll look for the name of the phone on your Wi-Fi options. So I see RC Iowa 1 right here. I'll click that, and I'll click Connect. Next, I'll want to type in the password that they've provided for me on the app, which I'll do right now. All right, and you want to click yes. Do you want to allow your PC to be discoverable by other devices? Click yes, and now it's checking network requirements. And once it checks network requirements, it should allow me to connect to the robot controller phone. And once I'm connected to the robot controller phone, you want to open up a web browser, and it doesn't matter which one. And then on that robot controller app, they've given you a URL, which we're going to go ahead and type in. And it's always going to be a similar code just like that, but your numbers could be different depending on the app. So then I'll hit enter, and it says it'll bring me to the web page for the programming tool. So you've got a couple different options here. You've got onbot Java, manage, or blocks. We're going to click blocks because we're sticking to block code. Now I've got previous programs that I've created, and you can see one of them was a little bit ago, and two others were a few days ago. They've got the date on there. So you can name they call it an OP mode or operation mode. You can name it whatever you'd like, but we're going to create a new one right now. So I'll create new op mode, and then I can name it whatever I'd like. So I'm going to call this one RC Car 1. And now here's the important part. You've got your sample code, which the top two options are the most critical. So basic POV drive, it's basic point of view drive. This one means with your left stick on your remote controller, that'll control forward and backward for your vehicle. The right stick will control your turning left and right. For basic tank drive, your left stick will control the left half of your drivetrain, and the right stick will control the right half of your drivetrain. So it really comes down to how you prefer to drive your RC car. The basic POV drive will drive the same way as the Force 1 Atomic X. So if you get used to that, it's maybe a good idea to go with this option. So you go ahead and click it, click OK, and the entire program just pops up for you. If you want to see the Java code that goes into it, you can see that over here on the right. But for now, I'm just going to close that down. And you can see everything in here is pulling information out of the configuration that you've built on your robot controller app. So you can see that you've named it either left drive or right drive. That's what it's set to here. Now, if I would have named this XYZ, this would be XYZ. But really, you're good to go. Unless you add a third motor to your RC car, this will be everything that you need in order to drive your vehicle. If you do want to add another motor, you've got tools over here. So you can click if, else. There are a whole bunch of tools, and if you add them in, all you need to do is delete them if you don't want them. And so if you want to be advanced, you can play around with that and try to do some of your own custom programming. But if you want to leave it to the basics, you just download the template, click Save OP Mode, and once you do that, you'll have the option on your robot controller phone to use the drop-down menu to select RC Car 1. And that's pretty much it. It's a straightforward, easy entry-level programming option for your RC car. All right, now that I've configured my robot on the robot controller, and now I've got my ping enabled between my driver's station and my robot controller phone, it's time for me to plug in my remote control via the OTG into the driver's station phone, which I've now done. And you'll notice there's a red LED on the USB hub. That means it's connected to the phone. And on the controller, you'll notice a purple light showing that the controller is active and connected to the driver's station phone as well. So here's one trick that's kind of not obvious. On the controller, there's a start button, which you need to click the start button and A simultaneously in order to tell the driver's station that your controller is active. And when you do that, on the driver's station, you've got user 1 and user 2. When I do that, you'll notice that a controller will pop up above user 1. So I'll do that now, and you can watch the controller pop up. So you notice the controller pop up here. That means the controller is on and engaged. Now what I'll do is I'll click this drop down arrow, which earlier I've set up configuration, a teleop configuration called Racer. I set up a teleop configuration called RC Car, which I'll click now. And now I'll click the big white button, which is called Initialize. I've clicked Initialize. Now you can see there's a play button. I'm going to click play. And now if I drive the controller is going to do whatever I put into my programming. But I've taken a standard template, and I've made sure that I've named my configuration for my motors left drive and right drive. I've plugged them into ports 0 and 1, and with all of that done, I should be able to drive the robot just like out of the box, just like you download the code and it's good to go. And so you see with the current program, the left stick controls the left drive, the right stick controls the right drive, and just like that, I've got a robot that can drive around and function and play the game that we're going to play. So now, if you have any questions, that's a lot to go through. Ask your instructor. Your instructor has resources and the ability to reach out to me. And if you feel confident, you feel like you can go forward, build the coolest robot you can, add all the motors that you can. You'll learn to program, you'll learn to build, and the more motors you have on there, maybe the faster your robot can go. You never know. You just play around with it, and that's kind of the whole point of the camp. So good luck, and I hope you have a ton of fun.